In this video, I'm going to have a real quick run over of what Pokemon I think work best in Solo Queue in Pokemon Unite. I managed to get Sticker every single season in Solo Duo Queue, so I just wanted to give a little bit of insight on what I think works best, what Pokemon you can reliably use in Solo Queue to get good results, you know? So we'll just jump right in. We'll use the general tier list. We'll just start at the top. So, starting with Venusaur. I'd throw Venusaur like somewhere like smack in the middle. I feel like he's one of them Pokemon where you can do really well like completely on your own, but also if the enemy team are somewhat coherent and just shut you down, like you do just get stuck. There's only like full heal can do so much for you. I do think Solo Queue, the Petal Blizzard Giga Drain build is probably a lot safer, because you just do a lot of everything on your own. You do a lot of damage, you have a lot of mobility, you have a lot of sustain. So I do generally just put him like smack in the middle. He's not like the best Solo Queue character, but he's also definitely not the worst. Gengar I'd probably put one higher. I reckon we throw Gengar into A. Gengar has a lot of outplay potential between both movesets, really. He can shred an entire team on your own. So if you are just better than the enemy, you can really like dominate a game with Gengar. You pop off quite early. As long as you get in jungle, he can solo carry pretty easily. He snowballs really hard and can do a lot in Solo Queue. So I think you can really dominate and just completely destroy enemy morale with Gengar. I think Mr. Mime still, despite the heavy Mr. Mime, Titan God Mime nerfs, I still think I'd put him up there pretty dang high when it comes to Solo Queue. I think if you have to play support and your typical teammates are laying Gardevoir, Rowlet, Cinderace, and Greninja, I think Mr. Mime's a really good pick still. He does decent damage, he can win a lot of 1v1s, there's a lot of outplay potential, he can be really annoying, he can block out enemy teams, he can set up massive team fights with his ult. His ult's still one of the best. At that Ray fight, if you need somebody to frontline, Mr. Mime jumping in with ult can completely win the team fight on its own. So I think Mr. Mime, as far as supports go, is definitely one of the best. I would put Snorlax. He's either in B or A as well. I think Snorlax might go to B in Solo Queue, purely because he can't do quite as much on his own with Mr. Mime. He's probably one of the best CC tanks in the game. Between Heavy Slam, and Block, he's an absolute nuisance. And if you got a coordinated team, I think Snorlax would be potentially S, not gonna lie. But I think in Solo Queue, you're limited to how much you can carry on your own with Snorlax. I do think in Solo Queue, he's a little harder to pop off with, because you can go in and have 5-man knockups, ult the entire enemy team at bay. But if your teammates still don't want to play the game, or are already given up, or are just not doing any damage whatsoever, I feel like Snorlax is quite as useful in Solo Queue as, say, Mr. Mime. Gardevoir. I think Gardevoir goes down in C. I think if you're really good, like if you can one-trick Gardevoir, and you get jungle and you can get to that Gardevoir stage early, you can really start to take over a game. But everybody and their mums tries to lane Ralts, and it's so weak. If I see a lane Ralts, I'm ganking that lane first. I'm going to make sure she's not Curlier for the first 5 minutes of the game. Obviously, again, if you are just better, you can take over games with Gardevoir. You can put out horrendous DPS. She's not a bad character, but I think in Solo Queue, she's a very weak pick. Absol, I think in Solo Queue goes up in A as well. I think he's got very prominent early game. His first clear is really quick, and you can usually get to your first gank pre anybody else, regardless of which build set you're taking, whether that's Pursuit or Night Slash. And he's really good at picking out stragglers in Solo Queue as well, because in Solo Queue nobody's coordinated. Absol can catch out so many squishy characters. If he catches a Rowlet, an LD, anything along those lines on their own, he will just absolutely obliterate them. So I think his Solo Queue potential is really high. Garchomp! Unfortunately, he's probably down in C or D. The buffs made him a little bit better, but he does still have to get all the way to 9 to become any kind of prominent character. His Gabite potential is not too bad. But in Solo Queue, there's so much kite in this game. So many people have CC and mobility spells. I still find he's really hard to stick to people still. Again, he suffers from, if you're putting him in lane, he's very easy to gank and punish early. So sometimes he doesn't get to be Garchomp for half of the game. So I do find that in Solo Queue, he's pretty rough. If you do get that pop off early, you can get to Garchomp and really really take over the game. You can be an absolute nuisance, but I don't find that's a very reliable thing to happen. If the enemy team have got an Absol and some prominent laners, you're gonna get completely destroyed. And he's just a bit of a waste to have in the jungle, really. Lucario, I still think's in a decent place. He's had metas where he's been the best Pokemon in the game, and then, well, sometimes he just gets completely forgotten. I still feel like he's pretty good. Both of his movesets are pretty decent. Extreme Speed's pretty good for stacking, getting in that lane. You can, he's still a pretty good early game laner. I think late game he still has a lot of potential with securing, with his power-up punch. If you're running that build, I think he's got a lot of secure, which in solo queue is really, really important, because a lot of the time your team aren't coordinated and you're not able to win those 5-man fights. So sometimes Lucario coming in unstoppable and being able to grab objectives is good. I still feel like he does decent DPS. He can't carry a game quite as hard as, say, like a Gengar, and probably not a Venusaur for the most part, unless you're really, really good with him. But I still feel like he's a pretty solid pick. Crustle, I really don't know whether he goes in C or D. In general DPS output and team fight potential, he's really, really poor. But he does have a better time laning than Gardevoir and Garchomp, so I think he sneaks into the same category as them, just on different kind of principles. At least he can score a lot. Even if he's getting completely destroyed, if he's running around with Goalgetter and Skull Shield and whatnot, he can still be an absolute nuisance. And he can do okay with objective secures. He runs Fluffy and is it Rock, the one where he throws them on the floor. Is Stealth Rock in this game? I don't play that much Crystal, but I feel like he can shred objectives really quickly, but his secure is really not that strong. He's not awful. He's not awful. You can make it work. Greninja, I feel like I would probably put up in A. He can just kind of do everything on his own. I think you shouldn't be picking it in the lane because, again, it's really easy to punish and shut down, like Gardevoir and Garchomp. If I see a lane frog, I am going to destroy that lane frog. If he's against prominent laners like a Snorlax Pikachu or a Mamo Ninetales, he's not playing the game. Ideally, you want it in the jungle, but I think if you can get Greninja in jungle, both movesets are pretty decent. You can do a lot of DPS. You've got sustain, you've got mobility, you've got secure. Greninja kind of has a lot going for him, so I think he's a really good solo queue pick. Talonflame, it's gonna be a B or an A as well. I'm gonna put it in B, but only just. It might end up sneaking up to A afterwards. I don't think it's an S. But Talonflame, again, really good early game dominance. Really, really garbage in lane. Do not play in lane. It's arguably one of the worst, if not the worst, you could pick in lane. But you get to Fletchinder at first clear. He does a lot of quick burst damage, kind of like Absol. Just got really, really good secure in Fly and Brave Bird. His damage is good. His potential to split cap is good. I think Talon's... He might end up sneaking into A when we come towards the end of this, but Talon's pretty good. I don't think it's as bad as Garchomp and Gardevoir in solo queue. But again, I wouldn't be incredibly chuffed to see it unless it was in the jungle, because Charmander, again, really, really, really weak laner. Once it gets Charmeleon, it can hold its own a little bit. I think the only reason I put it above Gardevoir and Garchomp is purely because of his ult. Even though it's been drastically nerfed, it's still such a nuisance. If he just jumps on a backline carry, like if he gets on the enemy sin race or something, they're just dead. There's just nothing you can do about that. Point and click CC ult kind of bumps him up that little bit. It just makes him a little bit useful, even if he's completely shut down. If he's 4 levels behind, that ult can still be an absolute nuisance. It's very, very annoying to deal with. I think Zera might be sitting in the same kind of boat. His early game's okay. I think his 1v1 potential is pretty unmatched. If he's got ult, he pretty much destroys every squishy he wants. So he does have a point and click delete button, which is pretty dang useful, so kind of like Charizard. He can definitely have his pop-off points, but if he gets behind, then I do feel like he's very, very far behind. He's okay. Cinderace is definitely in the same kind of boat as Greninja, maybe better, because of the secure in his ult is definitely better than Greninja's, and the buffs he gets after using his United, the attack speed one was pretty good. Especially with the introduction of Rapid Scarf as well, puts Cinder in a really nice place. He's going to be somewhere at the top side of A and S for me in solo queue. Obviously, you've got to be really careful with your positioning and make sure you don't get caught out, because you are very, very squishy. If, like, say, a Charizard, a Talon, or a Zera just gets you are just destroyed. But assuming you can position alright, I think Cinder is one of the not He's definitely up there. He's one of the best solo queue characters you can pick, in my opinion. I play a lot of Cinderace, so he's my second, if not top played character. LD, I feel like, again, as far as the supports go, she might well be up in A. I feel like she puts out some decent raw DPS. You're not going to supply that engage tank, so I don't think you should be picking LD unless you have some kind of other engage. Because if you do have a team of Cinderace, Greninja, Gardevoir, and Garchomp, and all you have for support is Eldegoss, you're not tanky enough to supply those engages like Snorlax or like Mr. Mime or something like that. You haven't got that kind of mad CC. I put Eldegoss quite high. I definitely put her in the low side of A as far as characters go, if not one of the best for support. So Cramorant, my boy. I had a season where I played Cramorant, early Cramorant, like the entire season, all the way up to 1800 in solo queue. Only Cram, dive, air, slash Cram. Unfortunately, these days I'd probably put you in C, my boy. I feel like the dive, air, slash stays are over, even if you max out cooldowns and jungle it and get blue buff. And again, it's kind of a waste to put it in the jungle. You don't want to be jungling it to get it the guaranteed blue buffs and cooldowns, really. And even then, he doesn't sustain as well as he used to. I feel like the change of map also hit Cram quite hard, because in the other map it was smaller. There was so many more choke points in which you could punish with a Cramorant ult, but people just couldn't get out of it altogether, whereas the map's so big now. I feel like his ult's less oppressive. He can't sustain as well as he could. His mobility's not as good. Again, just the cooldown buffs in general. So I feel like Young are more pushed into the Mage Cram build now, which unfortunately puts him in the same kind of bracket as Gardevoir. Blastoise probably sneaks his way up into at least B. Definitely higher in solo queue than, say, Charizard and Zera, but probably not quite as useful as a Snorlax. He does do more damage than Snorlax, so in that perspective, he might be more useful than having a Snorlax on your team. Because if you're running tank Snorlax, which you probably should be rather than Flail, you probably want Snorlax over Blastoise, but this is solo queues. If you're relying on your teammates not actually being able to play the game, Blastoise definitely is a more favorable pick. He does do more damage than Snorlax on the grand scheme of things, especially if you're running Rapid Spin. You're immune to crowd control as well, which is nice. He does do some pretty raw DPS. His ult is still one of the best in the game, so I think Blastoise is pretty decent. Again, I find it quite hard to carry a game on a Blastoise now, or do as much prominent engage as, say, a Mr. Mime still, but I think he's still pretty dang solid. I think Blastoise is still a decent pick. See, I'm a Pikachu truther here. I think Pikachu goes up in A for solo queue. I got a lot of back on that. I definitely wouldn't say he's S. But I think in solo queue, Pikachu's pretty damn prominent, not gonna lie. The execute on your Electro Ball is great for stealing objectives. And Volt Tackle being point and click CC on like a 6-second cooldown, absolutely insane. Really quite difficult to carry on like a Cinderace, because very rarely you're putting out 150k damage games from Pikachu. But the DPS is decent, the point and click CC is phenomenal. I really rate Pikachu in solo queue. I think more people should play it. It's not against me, because it's an absolute travesty, because he's such an annoying laner to play against. Clefable. Solo queue Clefable, unfortunately. I really quite enjoy playing Clefable. If I'm playing with a couple of friends, I love playing support Clefable, but I think she might be one of the worst characters to play in solo queue. I think in solo queue, she's pretty rough. If you're in a 5-stack pop-off, you can probably do wonders on Clefable, but I think in solo queue, especially with the amount of people that just give up and don't want to play or won't follow you, I think Clefable's there. You're signing yourself up for disappointment if you're trying to lock in Clefable, unfortunately. Ninetales goes in the higher side of B for me. DPS. The DPS is never as high as, say, a Cinderace or a Gengar, but like it can be really good. You can put out a lot of raw damage on Ninetales. Plus the raw amount of CC and early game pressure you have between all of your freezes and your auto attacks and your other moves as well. If you're running Avalanche and Blizzard as well, I think Ninetales is really solid. Wigglytuff. Again, I feel like sits in the same kind of bracket as Snorlax. So I'm going to put them side by side in B tier. It's not a very prominent pick. It does okay damage, but again, secure isn't great, so you are really relying on your teammates, which ideally in solo queue, unfortunately, is not that ideal. Slowbro, I want to put... It's either bottom of A or high B. I think Slowbro's got a really good pick for solo queue, personally. He puts out decent damage and Scald, and it nerfs a lot of attackers, so depending on what team you're against, nerfing physical attack can be really, really useful. It slows, it does really decent damage. I think Scald's a really good move. But then Surf, again, if you don't need that damage output, it can be really tedious to get out of. He's okay at securing objectives. I've seen a lot of Slowbro steal stuff with Scald and Surf. So again, its objective secures aren't that bad, so if you are forced onto Defender, he's not bad. You can just be an absolute nuisance with how tanky you are with Amnesia as well. And his ult, point-and-click suppression, can't be removed. If you catch somebody out at a position in solo queue with Slowbro ult, you're automatically going into a 4v5 over an objective fight. So I think Slowbro, pretty dang prominent, not gonna lie. Machamp, at this point, he's had a lot of buffs and nerfs across the place, hasn't he? He's not bad. He kind of sits exactly the same as Lucario to me. They kind of do exactly the same role. I wouldn't be upset to see Machamp in my game these days, but again, it's a lot easier punished than Lucario, but so if you can get Machamp behind, he kind of struggles, but if you can survive the early game as Machamp, your middle game into late game can be really good. Blissey. I think Blissey is one of the best characters in the game and should belong in S, if not high A, all the way around. But in solo queue, we're talking solo queue specifically here, Blissey's kind of rough. You can do so much as Blissey and still lose the game. It's a very... Again, I think Blissey is, if not one of the best characters in the game. But unfortunately in solo queue, it's really quite rough. Solo queue Mamoswine. He might be our first S, not gonna lie. Mamoswine is just... It's just so annoying in solo queue. He can just look after himself. He's got great secure as Swinub and Mamoswine and Piloswine. He's so tanky. I think Mamo definitely sits in S as far as solo queue goes. I think some other defenders can be more useful if you're in a stack, but I think in solo queue Mamoswine is the favoured defender pick. If your team was spamming, we need a defender, I think Mamoswine is usually your go-to. Obviously, just locking him in isn't going to win you a game, but if you get yourself half decent on Mamoswine, you need some kind of frontline tank to do all these engages for you, CC these annoying characters. He's really solid. I think he's one of the best characters in the game for solo queue. Sylveon. It's at the very... It's down with Charizard and Zera for me. It can really pop off. Both movesets are half decent. But it doesn't do as much damage as, say, like a Gengar, a Cinderace, a Greninja. Usually, say, a Pikachu, a Ninetales. Its damage is okay. Its sustain is alright as well. Mobility, its ult's okay. It can kind of rip objectives with things like Hyper Voice and stuff as well. I think it's an alright pick. I don't think picking the Sylveon's bad. I think it's less trolly than locking in Gardevoir and Garchomp, don't get me wrong, but I don't see many Sylveons pop off these days. At least you only have to get to 4 to be useful. But sometimes you're stuck as Eevee for the first 3-4 minutes of the game if the jungler gets there early. And you're against like a stronger lane. Let's say you're running Eevee and say your lane partner's a Greninja. You're going to have a really rough early if you're stuck against like LD Pikachu. You're going to have a really, really rough time. Greedent. Greedent's really obnoxious in solo queue, isn't he? Really obnoxious. He does everything Crustle does, but better. He does alright damage. He's just an outright nuisance, isn't he? So I think he sits quite high up in B. He scores a lot as well. He can get out of a lot of situations. He can very easily send an entire solo queue into Turbo Tilt. So I think his presence puts him up in at least high B. Right, come on, Decidueye. I'm sorry, my dude. Again, I love playing Decidueye, but solo queue's so rough. It's so rough. If you put it in the jungle, at least it doesn't get absolutely obliterated, but his lane is so weak. He is the squishiest thing in the world. If you get caught out in any situation by 90% of the characters of the game, you're probably gonna die. Dragonite! Oh, how you have fallen from grace, my friend. He's got one of the best secures in the game. But it's quite hard to get to Dragonite and be prominent all game up to that point. I think Serena, again, I'm kind of putting all these kind of all-rounders in the same kind of category. But I think, again, Serena kind of does the same kind of stuff that Machamp and Lucario does. If you're really good at them, then you're an absolute menace. You can be very, very good. But Bounce Sweet Steenie, quite easy to punish early. You require then stacks. If you get shut down, you're pretty useless for most of the game, unfortunately. Her ult's pretty good. Being able to get to a backliner and just pick them up and annihilate them is nice. But you'll have games where you pop off, and you have games where you get completely stomped and can't do anything, you know? It's one of them kind of characters. Trevenant! Oh, You've had so many up and downs, haven't you? My B's starting to get a bit clodded now. I don't think he goes into C. He's a real good setting piece. He can be really annoying. He's beefy if he's adding all his horn leeches and getting all his resets. He's really annoying. But he does struggle to solo carry a game. So Aegislash, I think is a bit higher than. I think he's sitting at the top of B or the bottom of A for me. I think Aegislash is a pretty dang good solo queue character. Honedge, he's not bad. You can lane it if you want to. You can jungle it if you want to. It kind of works. He kind of fills in both roles okay. When you get to Doublade and you've got the Sacred Sword, decent dueling potential as long as you're not missing anything. And when you do get to Aegislash, the Y guard is so obnoxious. You just look after yourself. You can sustain. You've got a bit of CC. You're secure with your ult is phenomenal. It's good for catching people out in 1v1s if you land it. Again, it's a little bit of a skill cap, but assuming you're good at Aegislash, I think Aegislash is one of the best characters to just do everything. Again, solo queue's really rough. Really, really rough for Hooper. If your teammates just don't come through your portals or use your portals, what are you going to do? Like, you can be the best Hooper in the world and make silly. Solo queue's still really rough. You can run the Trick Shadow Ball set, but at that point you're just an off DPS, and you're requiring, again, or somebody else in your team to actually be able to penalize off these tricks. You need to be tricking a Venusaur or a Cinderace or something along these lines, you know? Like, you're relying on teammates, which in solo queue is not the best way to climb. Duraludon! I think he sits in A, not gonna lie, quite comfortably. Good raw DPS, really good objective secure. Doesn't require lots of levels to entirely pop off. You can just again, if in solo queue, if you need to, you can just completely rip an objective and probably secure it. His secure's really, really good. Azu, all-rounders again. Again, Azu doesn't need... It might sneak into A. It doesn't... It's slightly harder at the very beginning of the game than, say, Lucario. But as soon as you get to Azu, you're already way more prominent than a Steenie or a Machoke. You've got so much sustain, so much raw damage. Your ult's on no cooldown. And 1v1s, not many people can fight Azu. Especially if he's running Aqua Tail. So I think his raw DPS sustain makes him really, really solid for solo queue. Espeon! I've recently really started enjoying Espeon. I'm going to put her in B though. Just above Sylveon. Pretty good damage all around. It's got a bit of mobility as well. If you're running a jet button and whatnot too, you can be really, really obnoxious with Espeon. I just think you want to take a jet button or X speed on it just to keep it alive, because you're unbelievably squishy. You're like Decidueye, but you don't press A very much. So I think Espeon, yeah, sits quite comfortably in the lower tier of B. Delphox! I'm gonna put, again, I've seen some people do some disgusting things on Delphox. I watch Scolded on an early day-to-day basis. His Delphox is phenomenal. But they're outliers. Usually what happens is the Delphox is forced to lane, and she has a really rough time until she gets to Delphox. But I do find in solo queue, it gets very punished very early, and most of the time it gets its blue buff and whatnot stolen. So I think for solo queue, it's a bit rough. If you're in a duo trio, I think Delphox is phenomenal. I think specifically in solo queue though, it's so hard, it's so easy to get griefed. If people steal your blue, if you have to lane it, if you get camped, I think Delphox is very easy to punish. So I think it sits somewhere around this kind of area in B as well. Glaceon! I still think Glaceon's really good. I still think Glaceon ends up in somewhere in A tier. It evolves level 4, it's great. Icy Wind's really good. Icicle Spear, really good. Icy Wind's just so much raw damage. With mobility as well, and for secures. You Icy Wind and then press B, you secure a lot of objectives as well. His ult's on a really short cooldown, it's so prominent. You can secure objectives, you can do damage, you've got mobility. Your passive is phenomenal, sometimes you're just immune to stuff. Like, I think Glaceon's really solid. Buzzy! Big old Buzzy boy. Oh, it's very high B, Buzzy. Very high B. The buffs with Beast Boost have been really, really nice. You can sustain really nice output, good damage all the time. Both movesets are really, really annoying. Superpower, really good for blowing people up, combined with the punch. I forget what his big punch is called. Leech Life, really, really annoying as well. A short point and click CC cooldown like that can be really, really nice. So yeah, he's kind of reliant on keeping his stacks up, not falling too far behind, and getting them early attack rate buffs and whatnot in, but he's pretty dang good now. Oh, Tita, my favorite Pokemon. I think you sit in the bottom of D, my dude. It's a shame. He might sneak into C just about, but for now I'm going to put him in the top side of D. Just because Larvitar and Pupitar don't exist. They're so useless. You have to jungle it, and if they do jungle it, I quite often counter jungle a Charizard, because a Charizard, a Tyranitar, what's he going to do? He's either a little cocoon man, or he's a tiny little goblin. Like, he just can't do much. He takes a long time to scale. And sometimes the game's only 10 minutes long. Sometimes he's a Pupitar for the first 6 or 7. Like, there's not much you can do about it if he's properly punished. Mew! You still go into A, don't you? Man, I hated Mew Meta so much. Mew, again, just kind of does everything on the tin. He gets ult really early at level 8, and it's a really annoying invisibility ult. I hate it. I hate it. He's so oppressive in lane. If he's against one of these typical solo queue, Cinderace, flippin' Decidueye lanes, he completely annihilates them. He's got Electro Balls, really annoying. The Search, really annoying. The Light Screen, the Solar Beam, everything Mew does is so toxic to play against in lane. His auto attack, again, just chunks squishies. His pick-off potential is objective securing potential. I think Mew's just still really good. It's a shame I can't play him, because Mew is really, really solid still. Cypher. I think in current meta, Cypher is S. Cypher's raw damage is disgusting. That Pokemon can 1v1 anybody as long as it lands the combo. His ult is a point and click delete button for any squishy he catches out. He's got mobility, he's got damage. He's just so annoying. Dodrio might potentially be in the same. Again, his solo queue potential is just absurd. If you can, it takes a bit of time to master Dodrio, but both of his movesets are incredibly obnoxious. He pops off really early, it's really easy to stack. He gets to Dodrio really quickly, you can't really stop him stacking either. He can split cap, he can team fight with his ult. He can remove squishies in one combo. He's really, really prominent at the moment. Scizor sits in A as well. Kinda reminds me of Aegislash, just maybe a tiny bit better. It doesn't have the CC Aegislash has, but arguably even better sustain. His ult's a bit annoying. He wins every 1v1 no matter what. He just out-sustains everybody and slowly chips you down to death. Scizor is like... I can't think of many characters that want to run into Scizor and successfully just 1v1 him. Is A or S? As far as the supports go, he might be S still. He's been nerfed, yes. But he's still incredibly annoying. What an annoying little goblin. His ult, again, it kind of sits at this kind of skill gap though. You need to be good at it, and it takes some work. But if you're a good solo queue Sableye, you're incredibly annoying. I do find it's hard to carry as Sableye. But maybe for that, he might sit in high A rather than S. But as supports go, he's probably the only one I would gauge at putting in S. Maybe Mr. Mime. Especially in his God era, Mr. Mime. But if I had to pick one of those two to go up into S, it would be Sableye on Mime. Zoroark. Oh, again, how the mighty. He might still sneak his way into A just about. Based on pure damage output alone, his level 5 is still really oppressive. As soon as he gets that Night Slash and Shadow Claw and whatnot, he's really, really annoying. He does a lot of really good raw damage. And the only reason I don't sneak him up any higher into A is because he doesn't really have any kind of crowd control. So if you grab Zoroark, he does just die. He's very squishy. But if you're running full heal, you're jumping around, you're annihilating backliners. Your Secure is pretty dang good with your ult as well, that AoE blast. I think Zoroark can really carry games. Very, very similar to the Absol kind of prominence here. So maybe he sits around the same kind of solo queue as Absol here. God, which one is water style and which one's punchy style? So water style, I'm putting in the bottom of B. I feel like it does very similar stuff to Serena, just not quite as good. I think the fighting style one either goes in A or S. It definitely sits high up in A at least. He basically, the punch. No, Fruit Chop's the other one. He has another move. The big secure punch you want is so good for objectives. Can't be stopped. That mad damage is basically a smite. It's disgusting. His ult's really good. He's got mobility. He's got a bit of sustain. I think he's just as far as the all-rounders go, he's probably up there. And then Dragapult. Dragapult going based off what I've seen. I haven't actually got Dragapult yet. Probably sits in the same kind of boat as Glaceon. He's either sitting at the top of B or the low of A for me at the moment. His raw damage is really good, and the invisibility makes him really obnoxious. And Solo Q, again, you can just throw off all of the randos who have no idea where you are and what you're doing. You do have a lot of get in and out potential on your own, so you can look after yourself. And the raw damage is nice, so I think he sits around here. He takes a little bit longer to pick up than, say, Glaceon, Duraludon, Azu, and whatnot, because he needs to get to Dragapult, but he survives that stage. He can survive lane if he really has to, and jungle is nice. So I think Dragapult, again, quite sits comfortably in the bottom tier of A. Obviously, Comfey, we have no idea. But assuming you're going to be Yuumi, it's going to be in here, isn't it, realistically? I'm debating. I think if I had to move one of the supports up to S to have one of each role in there, I think I would sit with these three where they are still. I'd probably move either Sableye or Mime up. I generally don't know which one. I think they're both really, really good. And then as attackers go, we'd probably end up throwing up Cinderace. Mew is still really, really good for Solo Q. Is that all the roles? Attack, Beanstar, all-rounder, support, defender. Yeah, that is all of them. That is all of them. Assuming we're not really saying Cypher is an all-rounder though, are we? So probably either Urshi or Sizzle would go up there, because Cypher's kind of a speedster, really, isn't he? So if I was going to be really generous, I'd maybe throw those guys up in S. Aegislash might be pushing it a little bit. Maybe Urshi. Maybe Sizzle. Kind of where I gauge. That's where I would be comfortable picking these things, assuming I can play them. A lot of these characters I'm not very good at, but assuming you're good at these characters, I think they're the kind of characters I would put into what kind of position and for what reasons. So hopefully that helps. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Catch you guys in the next one. Bye! You can check out one of my last videos over here. Here are your recommended videos. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It really, really helps out the channel. If you guys do want to go the extra mile and support these weekly uploads, we do have a Patreon. The link is down below. All proceeds go toward future projects.